Hi, everyone. Welcome to Forward DFW, together with the Dallas Morning News. I'm Ron Corning. November is Caregiver Awareness Month. There are 38 million caregivers in the United States. 61% of them are still employed full-time, trying to balance the responsibilities of caring for a loved one with their other responsibilities. 23% of caregivers say their health is in decline as a result of all of the stress associated with this role. There is no better source or resource for navigating this difficult time in your life than the Senior Source in Dallas. And Kimberly Knight is joining us. She's the director of the Caregiver Support Program at the Senior Source. And Kimberly, thank you for being here and having this conversation, which I know is going to shed light on this for people who at some point in the future are going to deal with this. It's likely, is it not?
It is likely. You know, this is something that we don't often think about. Family caregivers. And it's a role that we're typically not prepared to take on. It's something, becoming a caregiver, it takes you by surprise. Something happens to a loved one and you just step up and step in and do the best that you can. And so we want people to know that the Senior Source is here, especially the Caregiver Support Program, to help them navigate the throes of caregiving.
And we're going to run down some of the services you provide. We need to stress here that the Senior Source provides services to people to help them through this difficult time. And it's not necessarily income qualified help. That's correct, right?
Yes, correct. You know, and that's one of the myths that's out there, that if I don't income qualify, then I can't receive services. Organizations like the Senior Source, and there's so many others that you don't have, that income is not a qualifier. It's more so age. And for us, you know, our services, if a caregiver is 50 years older, or if they're taking care of someone 50 years or older, then we're here to help them.
And it does happen earlier in some families, depending, as you say, a catastrophic turn of events, be it a stroke or a heart attack. In my case, my mother was the victim of a traumatic brain injury at 39. And so her care came much sooner than it might have for others. And just to be clear, the Caregiver Support Program is not for seniors who are caring for loved ones. It's for people of any age, as long as the person they're caring for is 50 years or older.
That's correct. And that's something that we really want to point out because, you know, you can be a caregiver at any age. Like you said, in your family situation, you were a younger caregiver. And so we want younger caregivers to know if their parents, if they're taking care of aging parents or a family member, that they can call on the Caregiver Support Program to assist them.
And then somebody who is alone, you call them solo agers.
Yes, exactly. We call them solo agers. And so also if you're an older adult and you're aging in place at home, whether your kiddos live far away or you have limited family support, or maybe you didn't have children and you just need an extra helping hand to help you navigate aging, then we can also help you at the Senior Source through the Caregiver Support Program.
You offer what's called a care consultation, right?
Yes.
And it's just 30 minutes?
No, a care consultation can be 30 minutes to an hour. And I feel like the care consultation is literally kind of like the best kept secret in town as far as what we offer. It is a time where you can sit down with a caregiver support specialist. We can do it virtually or in person. And we listen to you. We listen to what's going on in your caregiving journey. And we provide you with information and resources specifically tailored to what you're facing and dealing with. You walk away with that from that conversation or meeting with what we call a care plan. And that plan helps you to determine what you need to tackle first, second, and third. And then we follow up with you after that moment, right? To see how you're doing, how you're progressing with that plan. And oftentimes additional questions pop up because once you start reaching out to those resources, then you may need additional help from us. And so we want to make sure that we're there to provide you that helping hand along the way.
I'm trying to think about and quantify the amount of time I spent trying to figure this out for myself, asking coworkers who had aging parents, asking attorneys who did estate planning, trying to figure out what we could afford and what we couldn't. To think with a 30 to a 1 hour call, you could have really paved the way with some really important questions. And we want to put some of them on the screen, and perhaps we'll just kind of touch on a couple of them. This one in particular, how do I know when it's time to move my loved one from home to a facility? How do you know it's time?
Well, I would just definitely say their activities of daily living are very important. And your activities of daily living are things such as bathing yourself, dressing yourself, feeding yourself. Do you still have the ability to stand in front of your stove and cook a meal, just a simple meal, scramble eggs? Are you having problems moving around your home, walking? Are you now needing assistive devices? Those are the types of things you want to look at to determine whether or not your loved one is able to still live at home alone safely.
And the reason why some people are suffering, their own health is suffering, is because they're prolonging that decision because they think they're going it alone and they're not having the difficult conversations. You talk about that, and you also provide a mediator in situations where maybe there's a family dynamic that makes it even more difficult to have that conversation. How to find out about respite care? That's a question you begin to answer. How do you get to doctor's appointments? What are the type of home health care that might be available in the meantime? And if you're aging in place as well, you talked about that with solo agers who are alone. Just some of the questions that are part of that care consultation that the Senior Source will provide for you. And we're going to continue this conversation, Kimberly, with you and with Dr. Curtis Hill. When we come back, he's going to address the issue of men as caregivers, an experience that he has had himself, and that might also shed some important light on this important topic. And we'll be back right after this. If you are a resident of Dallas or Collin County, the Caregiver Support Program at the Senior Source has resource events throughout the city that include vendors, live exercise classes, utility assistance, and more. Learn more about the upcoming events at theSeniorSource.org. We are back, and we want to continue our conversation about Caregiver Awareness Month and exactly what that process is like when you're faced with caring for a loved one. Dr. Curtis Hill is joining us. He is a therapist professionally, and yet was faced with this very personal situation. And I'm curious to know, Dr. Hill, first of all, thank you for being here. Emotionally, were you equipped for what you faced when it came to caring for your mom back pre-2014?
Right. Of course not. I mean, I think we have a tendency to think that this is something you prepare for. And certainly I was totally caught off guard. I knew it was coming a little bit because basically she had some health issues, and they actually went on hospice. And so that was kind of really difficult for me because now I'm having this conversation with my mom about, okay, what are we going to do? What's going to be happening? And it's something I hadn't really prepared for. And I was trying to do that remotely because I was working in another city. So I'm actually doing this coming back on the weekend, and then I'm trying to work things out during the week by phone and touching bases with loved ones and so forth.
So Dr. Hill, you really were among the 61% of people who were still working full-time, trying to balance caregiving of your mom and doing it long distance as well. So the conversation as it started with your mom, how difficult was it? Was it not as difficult as you thought, or did you realize in having it, I wish I'd had it sooner, it would have been easier?
Certainly, I wish when we reflect back on it, it would have been much easier if I could have had that conversation. I could have prepared and put some things in place. I did a fairly good job, but I certainly wasn't, I didn't really kind of construct this the way we probably needed to, because there was always something that kind of popped up at the last minute that you hadn't thought about. But okay, if I could have done this a little bit differently, I think this would have made it. But my concern was really more about, quote unquote, dealing with her in terms of transitioning and her having the quality of life and the dignity that was associated with that. We went back and forth. We put her in a nursing home for a while, and it was just so difficult in terms of that experience. And then, it was just something we tried. It didn't work, and then actually brought her back home.
Let's speak to this issue, which I find interesting, and that is men typically are not, Kimberly, the care providers in a family dynamic. It's changing.
Yes.
I think the number is 40% now.
Yes, exactly.
40% of caregivers are men, and that number is on the rise. First of all, what accounts for a lack of involvement on the part of men, and what do you think accounts for the shift and the change?
I think it's just simply gender roles. Traditionally, women have been looked upon as more the caregivers and caretakers of the family. And so when someone is sick or something happens, we just kind of naturally look to the women in the family to step up and step in and take care of that individual. I think as far as kind of what's changing now, we are living longer. And so you have more adult children, males who are getting involved, just having the opportunity to, be there for their family members in that way.
Dr. Hill, what was the dynamic, if you don't mind sharing, in your own personal situation that put you on the front line of caring for your mom?
Well, I guess it's a little bit helpful to be a therapist, but it's just the emotional pull that's associated with that. I think for men,
But you didn't lack family support otherwise?
Well,
or did
actually,
you feel you were going it alone in a lot of cases?
I kind of felt like I was alone. And part of that was because I'm kind of somewhat that person that my family goes to. Everyone has someone that
So no blame in
to.
it.
No blame.
But the end result can be the same, whether it's a willing situation, you step up, or others just rely on you and you embrace that. You still can find yourself in a situation where you're facing the emotional challenges, the physical challenges. Did your health decline, for example? Did you feel like you were losing grip of your own life as this was ongoing?
I didn't think about it in terms of that, but I was really just basic on autopilot. That's exactly what was going on with me. I'm trying to deal with what was happening, what was in front of me, trying to manage family members in terms of what was they were experiencing, and really, for the most part, caring for who really needed the most. In this case, it was my mom. So I think that was the dynamics I was doing.
So it's interesting, even in a situation where there might be one person who's doing the heavy lifting and maybe doing it willingly, everybody feels like they're a stakeholder and should have an opinion.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head because, it's like, okay, well, I'm having to manage all these different pieces.
And now you want to tell me how to do it.
That's exactly right.
But isn't that part of the difficult conversation that needs to be had with the family before someone gets ill, right? Designating roles and responsibilities?
Yes.
Good,
and that would be so helpful if we pre-planned, right? If we had this conversation sooner, then we could talk, we could have that open dialogue, that open conversation. And sometimes when we do the care consultation at the Senior Source, we invite family members. We ask the question, are there other family members that need to have a seat at the table when we have this conversation?
And even if someone is healthy, have the conversation, put the plan in place, because then it's a contingency as you move forward, hoping nothing comes of it, but you have it if you need it.
Yes, and they can actually be a part of the conversation. This isn't something that you have to hide from them.
You know what they want.
You know what they want. You hear from them. And then the beauty of it is everyone hears from them. So it doesn't turn into a situation where, they assume that you are speaking for mom or dad when indeed this is what mom and dad wanted.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to wrap this conversation in just a moment, but I just want to say this has come full circle for you. You lost your mom in 2014. I know it doesn't get easier, even at this point. But is it easier for you now because you're involved as a volunteer helping men in a support group and in other ways through the Senior Source so that others are more prepared to deal with this than you were?
Oh, absolutely. It's about a little bit about, paying it forward, as they say. The idea that you know what you experienced, what you were dealing with. And it's just not just empathy in this case. There's a level of sympathy because you've had that experience and you're dealing with other men that have had that experience. Different, maybe a mom, maybe a spouse, or maybe another family member that they're dealing with.
And you're probably better informed to counsel your patients who are dealing with a family dynamic. I want to run down through a list of things and leave our viewers with this, Dr. Hill. And I know these are things, some of which you learned the hard way. Self-care, very important. Just doing the small things, even if it's, taking a moment to take a walk, catch your breath, having a good night's sleep. Don't neglect your own health. Respite care, knowing that you can get paid help or you can get help from volunteers, knowing that you can get someone to help you. Senior companions, those are also volunteers offered by the Senior Source. And finally, support groups. You find that that's a very helpful thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Even with men who don't like to talk with anybody. You want to try to get them in a group to talk.
Well, I think what happened, you're surprised that what men would do once we get it.
Once they're faced with it.
That's right. Yeah. Once you're dealing with it, then what happens, it comes forward. It's whatever is there, it comes forward. Now, you may not necessarily have all the answers, and I think that's okay. The dynamics is being able to have the experience of being able to express it. And that's catharsis in and of itself. Yeah. That's a little bit of therapy just about being able to kind of talk about, but this is what was going on because you got it out versus holding it in.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your personal experience. Thank you now for your volunteerism and the work you do for the Senior Source. And I'll be back with Kimberly in just a moment as we wrap up this conversation with some really important information to leave you with. We're back right after this. If you are a caregiver in Dallas or Collin County and need a roadmap for success, the Senior Source presents an online class called Caregiving, Where Do I Start? It's the third Wednesday of every month. Visit theSeniorSource.org for details and to register. Welcome back, everyone. We are back with Kimberly Knight. She's the director of the Caregiver Support Program at the Senior Source. And hearing Dr. Hill's personal story, which I really appreciate him sharing, his personal journey, and that's helped inform his decisions that he makes as a volunteer for your organization. How does it feel for you to know that you have the support of a Dr. Hill and others who are really coming in with their own personal experiences and helping those who are just facing this journey?
I think it's phenomenal that Dr. Hill and other therapists are willing to donate their time to our organization. That means that our clients get a higher level of care for free when they take part in a support group.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's needed. Support groups are a way for caregivers to build community and just talk to other people that just get it. Sometimes as a caregiver, you just need to vent and be surrounded by those who understand what it's like to be a caregiver in a space that's safe and non-judgmental. And so to have that expert guidance in that, because he has the ability to also give them tools to help them cope and not just come and vent. So I think it's great.
I have a couple personal questions for you, if you don't mind. How do you, this is your job, I know, your career, it's your passion, but there's a level of burnout among those who help those who are caregiving in what you do. How do you take care of yourself?
With a therapist. And also, I would say, just other coworkers. We have community and we can share and talk about our cases and just different things. So that's helpful. But also to just taking a moment sometimes for yourself and just walking, taking a stroll. Sometimes during the day, I literally just take a little stroll.
Take in some sun, get some air, and just kind of try to take your mind off it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like because of your role and what you do, you've been that person in your family who sort of guided and informed? You're smiling because it's true, right?
Yes.
Have you stepped into that role, or does your family know that this is what you do and you're the source? You're their literal senior source.
It's both. It's both and. You kind of in families, you get nominated for things automatically when they know this is a part of what you do, but also too, having this knowledge, I definitely want to share with my family. And,
And are they more receptive than the average family?
At first, no, they weren't, but now they are because they know I'm going to talk about it. We have this conversation every Thanksgiving. We're together as a family. And I know it may sound odd or awkward. And at first it was a little awkward, but now, it's something that they've come to embrace. And actually, my niece just put in a group chat just the other week about, hey, about insurance, life insurance. Does everyone have a life insurance? And how many policies do you have? Do you have enough to cover your basic bills after, you're no longer here? And so that's not a question typally.
And at the Thanksgiving table.
Oh, yeah.
You're I want to be cremated, pass the potatoes.
Pretty much. But it's something, even though it's not something we want to talk about, we're all aging and it's a part of life. And
look what happens when we don't talk about it, right? When we don't talk about it, what you do is a testament to that.
Yeah.
Families are in crisis. Other parts of their lives are compromised, including their personal health, the well-being of their families. If we don't have these conversations, it's not going to go away.
No, and it actually has the potential to tear a family apart. And in many cases it does because arguments start. We don't agree on things that, I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. And so in that scenario, if we didn't have this information from our mother already, then, what I feel like should happen and what they may feel like should happen may not be the same thing. And so we're at a stalemate, right? When we can't agree. And, who's suffering in that stalemate is our mother because a decision has to be made.
And let's talk about for families who are looking down the road, and maybe this podcast has inspired them to sort of think about the future for their own loved ones. You have opportunities at every stage for people to get information, whether it's on your website for an overview, but you also have a monthly Zoom. That's an opportunity, I would think, for someone to just kind of lean into the process and find a little bit more about it. What is that like for you, that monthly?
That monthly education program is called Caregiving, Where Do I Start? And it's an excellent resource for someone who's a brand new caregiver, or maybe you've been doing this for a while and there's maybe, some changes or a particular issue you want to just get some more information about. During that education program, it's an hour. So it's virtual. You can join from anywhere. And we talk about things like activities of daily living, important documents you need to have, long-term care communities. What's the difference between a Part A facility and a Part B facility? What does that mean to me?
And this information is available to anyone. So if you're in a small town, a rural community, but you have good internet service, you're plugged into the Senior Source to find out this information. Well, thank you, Kimberly, for everything you do personally, for everything that the Senior Source does as well. We really, really appreciate it during what is Caregiver Awareness Month. And so think about that caregiver in your life, what they might need. Maybe what they need is the phone number to Senior Source. I'm Ron Corning. Thank you for joining us for Forward DFW together with the Dallas Morning News. We'll see you next time. The Caregiver Support Program helps individuals and families at every phase of their caregiving journey. Visit theseniorsource.org for more information. Email them at csp@theseniorsource.org or call the number on your screen.